Hey everyone, Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and today we're looking at a system that is pretty damn extreme using all of the latest stuff from AlphaSync Gaming. Let's do this. I wish these files would transfer faster. Come on! Whoa, is that the FireCuda 510 NVMe drive with its blistering fast speeds of 3450 megabytes a second read, 3200 megabytes a second write, and capacities of up to 2 terabyte? I can have these files transferred in no time. And if I'm looking for the ultimate performance, I can even get the 4th generation FireCuda 520. I better check the link in the description to find out more details. So before I get started with this, I do want to mention, as you can probably see on the desk, we've got merchandise now, and we've got, God, all sorts of stuff. So head over to store.eteknix.com, the link will be in the description below, and you can see all them amazing goodies, which consequently support us, and you get some amazing looking merch, just like this. So let's jump into the build and what we actually have here. So this is a rig from AlphaSync Gaming, and it comes in, I'm going to get this off my chest straight away, at £3,000, give or take a couple of pennies. Now, AlphaSync Gaming, for anyone who doesn't know who they are, they're a system integrator in the UK, and they do things just a little bit differently. So as a normal system integrator, you'd find that they would allow you to spec up a system. You then have to wait quite a few days, sometimes even over a week, for them to be arrived. AlphaSync, they've got this wonderful, beautiful thing that they are actually part of eBuyer in a weird and wonderful way. Now what that means is that they have a huge warehouse where they can build up systems much like this, which as you can see isn't exactly the smallest thing in the world, and store them there. So when someone does buy a system, which you can just head over to the website, you can buy it and get it delivered next day. It's also worth noting that they do finance as well. So if £3,000 is maybe a little bit out of your realm and what you actually have available in your wallet, you might be surprised as to what you can actually get when utilizing their finance options. So that's enough of kind of the businessy stuff. What do we actually get here? Well, anyone who's seen any content that we've done before with AlphaSync will know that they pretty much use the best of the best when it comes to the components. So we're talking Asus ROG, we're talking Corsair, we're talking on this specific build, the Intel 10900K. So they really have gone for the top of the top. So processor wise, we've got the 10900K, which I know there's a lot of talk about how AMD are killing it in the market, but you got to remember Intel still have a huge market share, and a rig like this is definitely going to appeal to someone. And as we all kind of know as well, Intel are actually, well, I guess the king when it comes to FPS. When it comes to gaming performance, AMD just really can't keep up at the moment. I'm not to say that that's not going to change at a later date, but at the moment, yeah, there's huge differences between the high-end AMD and the high-end Intel when it comes to gaming performance. Now, speaking of gaming performance, this has got a 2080 Ti in it. It is, as I mentioned, the best of the best, the creme de la creme. We've got the Asus ROG Strix 2080 Ti OC, or overclocked edition. So straight away, we are getting a lot more performance than what you would get over a typical 2080 Ti. You're also getting a triple fan cooler on there, so you are getting extreme performance in terms of the cooling aspect of it. Now, moving on to other cooling aspects of the build, we have a H100i RGB Platinum at the front, which I'm not overly keen on because with this chassis, the Spec Omega RGB actually has placement for a 360mm radiator. And personally, I would have liked to have seen that in the front, because when you use a 240, especially when you've got it in the top 2 fan mounts, it kind of cuts off here and it just looks like it's not finished. It's not as refined as what I would like to maybe see myself. It's just not as refined as what I would personally like, and just, I don't know, maybe a little rough around the edges. Hopefully AlphaSync kind of take this as a bit of feedback as to what I would slightly do differently. There is another thing about this build that I'm not overly struck on, and that's the fact that the case itself comes with fans, and if I remember rightly, they're the HD RGB fans. So there's one here and there's one down the bottom, but the H100i RGB Platinum comes with ever so slightly different fans. And even though the effect and everything is all synchronized through IQ, which looks absolutely amazing, you will see that that bottom fan and the consequent fans that are above it are ever so slightly different in the way they look and the way that the RGB kind of interacts with it. Other RGB on here, we have the RGB memory. So we've got Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. I'm a little bit disappointed that at £3,000 you are looking at DDR4 3000 megahertz. Personally, when you look at the price difference between 3000 megahertz up to 3200 and even then up to 3600, there's not a huge amount of difference in it. So I would have liked to have seen at least 3200 megahertz, maybe even pushing towards 3600 megahertz. The only other real gripe that I have with this system, and AlphaSync, please forgive me, it's my job to be sort of critical of, you know, builds and what you can actually do, and we have actually spec'd this up ourselves to see what the cost is, and I will go through that as well, is the motherboard. So in terms of the motherboard, they've got it in there, it looks lovely, it's an ROG Strix Z490 e-gaming. So they've added a Wi-Fi card. Now, typically you can pick up Wi-Fi cards, well, fairly cheap. But for a decent one, from a decent brand, even Asus make them, Aorus, Gigabyte, loads of other brands, TP-Link, you're looking at around 25 to 30 quid. Now, when you take the price of the motherboard, which retail price is about £260, add on, say 30 quid, you're up to 290. Well, for 10 quid more, they could have upgraded the motherboard to the Z490 F Gaming, and well, they would have got slightly better VRM, 16 phases instead of 14 phases, and it would have had Wi-Fi on board, so you wouldn't have this little card sitting at the bottom. And in all honesty, I think maybe AlphaSync could have swallowed that £10 difference. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Let me know in the comments section below what you guys think. Other than that, I mean, that's kind of the main spec of the system. Powering it all though, you can't really see it underneath this PSU shroud, so they didn't need to go with anything kind of too crazy in terms of something that has, you know, screen on it or styling or something like that. But they've gone for a 750 watt Corsair TXM PSU. So we have the modularity of it. We have Corsair, who, as we know, on the sort of mid to high end, do make very, very good power supplies. And we also get 750 watts. Now this system is never going to use 750 watts, but it gives you a little bit of room for future-proofing and upgradability. So I think they've actually balanced the system very, very nicely. There's just a few little changes I'd make. As I mentioned, the AIO I would change. The memory speed I would change. The motherboard I would change. And I don't think it would affect the bottom line of when you're talking about profit as a system integrator. Now, with all that kind of, you know, done, dusted out the way, the case, that's going to be a bit of a subjective one. I kind of like it. But a lot of this is all going to come down to how it performs. So what we've done is we've installed a whole host of different games on there, cranked them up to, well, as you can expect with a 2080 Ti and a 10900K, cranked them up to 4K. We're going to see exactly how this bad boy does. Let's roll them. So for the first game, we're looking at Fortnite on epic settings at 4K. And as you can see, everything looks great. And this gave us an average FPS of about 70. Next game up is Doom Eternal, this time on Ultra Nightmare settings, which admittedly sounds pretty cool. Again at 4K, you're getting an average FPS of around 95. Next game up is Borderlands 3. This is actually a pretty intensive game, but we decided to crank it all the way up to Badass, which is the maximum settings, again at 4K, this time getting an average FPS of around 50. Obviously you could tweak the settings just a little bit to get it over that magical 60 FPS number. Now moving on to a game that actually has ray tracing. We were looking at Metro Exodus. On high settings with ray tracing also on high and also having DLSS enabled. At 4K, it was actually giving us pretty surprisingly an average of 70 FPS. Next game up is Grand Theft Auto 5, a personal favourite of mine, and on very high settings again at 4K, we was getting some pretty decent results around 100 FPS. Now even though it doesn't seem that demanding, Elder Scrolls Online is pretty up there even with the best of them. It's quite a massive game, so obviously it does take up quite a lot of resources. On ultra high settings at 4K though, we were still able to garner around 110 FPS, which is pretty damn impressive, I'm sure you agree. And lastly, looking at probably the hottest game of the year, Call of Duty Warzone. We had this on high settings with ray tracing enabled as well at 4K, and we're still actually getting a decent FPS of around 80. So there you go guys, there's the performance for you, and as you kind of probably expected, it's no slouch. Even at 4K, it handles things absolutely amazingly. I mean, what do you expect for the price that you're paying for the system and the components that you're actually getting inside? Speaking about the price and the components, we actually took to kind of building this up ourselves on PC Part Picker, and it comes out about the same price. Admittedly, it's about 40 quid cheaper at the moment building it yourself, but you're not going to get a 3-year warranty. You get 1 year parts and 3 years labor on this. You're not going to get next day delivery and someone building it for you, and that just technical support that you'd get from AlphaSync. So for me, an extra 40 quid is probably worth it. Yes, you could save some money on the operating system and buy it from the likes of CD Keys or even eBay for a couple of quid, but that's really down to you and what you want to do with your system. If you like building systems, maybe do it yourself, but if you don't, or even if you do, I still think this is worth it, to be fair. Yes, it's £3,000, but it's definitely the right thing for that kind of money. So there you go guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know exactly what to do. And yeah, remember, check out the merch store, store.eteknix.com, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later guys, bye bye.